never sounds gentle when you're 16 and alone. It sounds like judgment. My name is Angelina. And the night my stepmother told me to wait right here, the rain was falling so hard it erased the city lights, the road behind us, and the last illusion I had that adults always protect you. The car stopped beside an old metro station on the edge of the city. No shops, no guards, just flickering yellow lights and empty benches soaked with rain. My stepmother didn't even look at me when she spoke. "Get out," I laughed nervously. "What?" My father kept his eyes on the steering wheel. "Angelina," she said again, this time sharper, "you're old enough to understand. We can't do this anymore." The door unlocked. That sound, click, still lives inside my chest. "But it's raining," I said, my voice small, stupid, hopeful. My father finally spoke. "We'll come back. Adults lie best when they whisper." I stepped out, holding my thin jacket close, waiting for one last word, one last look, one last sign that this was a mistake. The car pulled away. Red lights disappeared into rain. And just like that, I became invisible. If you're listening right now, subscribe, because this isn't just a sad story. This is the beginning of a revenge written in patience, pain, and success no one saw coming. I stood there for a long time. I didn't cry. Shock does that to you. It freezes tears before they're born. The metro station smelled like rust and wet concrete. A digital clock blinked 11:47 p.m. like it was mocking me. No trains, no people, just rain dripping through cracks, and the sound of my own breathing getting faster. My phone was dead. My wallet had $12. I sat on a bench and hugged my knees, telling myself this was temporary, that my dad would come back. He didn't. Hours passed. The rain soaked through my clothes, into my bones, into the last warm memories of childhood I still had. By morning, I was shaking. Not from cold, from realization. My real mother had died when I was 9. Cancer. Quiet, fast, gone. My father remarried 6 months later. People said it was for me. They lied. My stepmother never hit me. She didn't need to. She erased me slowly. Food disappeared when I was hungry. My room became storage. My presence became inconvenient. And that night, she finished the job. A security guard finally noticed me around sunrise. "Kid," he said gently, "where are your parents?" I laughed. It came out broken. I guess they missed the train. He bought me a coffee. Let me sit in his booth until morning crowds arrived. Then he did what the world does best. He let me go. The shelter was loud, crowded, desperate, but it was warm. I learned quickly that tears make you weak there. Silence keeps you safe. I took any job I could, cleaning tables, washing dishes, carrying boxes heavier than my body. School became a luxury I couldn't afford. At 17, I lied about my age. At 18, I stopped lying to myself at least. No one was coming to save me, so I started saving myself. At night, I sat with old library books about business, money, systems. I didn't dream of love or happiness. I dreamed of control, because control meant safety. Years passed. I failed more times than I can count. I slept in cars. I skipped meals. I smiled when people underestimated me, especially when men laughed. By 25, I owned my first small company. By 30, I owned the building it operated from. By 35, people called me Miss Carter in boardrooms and didn't know why the sound of rain made my jaw tighten. I never forgot the metro station. Never forgot the bench. Never forgot how disposable I was to the people who were supposed to love me. One evening, after closing a deal worth more money than my father ever earned in his life, my assistant said, "Your dad called." I didn't answer. She hesitated. "He sounds desperate." I smiled, not happy, ready, because life has a strange sense of timing. My stepmother, she had left my father years ago, took what she could, left him with nothing. No daughter, no wife, no pride. Funny how abandonment comes full circle. But this story isn't about forgiveness. It's about karma learning your address. If you're still listening, subscribe, because in the next part, my father walks back into my life, and he doesn't recognize the girl he left in the rain, and I don't remind him. I let success do the talking. The first time my father walked back into my life, he didn't recognize me. That was the most satisfying part. I was sitting at the head of a long glass table, rain tapping softly against the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, the city glowing beneath me like something I owned. 16 years ago, rain had taken everything from me. Now, it bowed outside my window. The assistant leaned in and whispered, "He's here. No appointment. Says it's urgent." I didn't look up from the documents in front of me. "What's his name?" I asked calmly. She checked her tablet. "Robert Hayes." My fingers paused for half a second. Then I smiled. "Send him in. If you're listening right now, subscribe, because what happens when the girl you abandoned becomes the woman who controls your future is something karma writes very carefully." The door opened. I smelled him before I saw him. Cheap cologne, old regret, fear. He stepped in slowly, shoulders bent, hair gray, hands shaking slightly as he adjusted his worn jacket. This was not the man who once sat in a warm car and let his 16-year-old daughter disappear into a rainy night. This was a man already punished by life. He looked around in disbelief. The office, the view, the nameplate on the desk, Anglina Carter, CEO. His eyes stopped there, then lifted, then froze. For a moment, his face showed confusion. Then recognition tried to fight through guilt. Then fear won. "Anglina," he whispered. I leaned back in my chair. "No," I said softly. "You must be mistaken." His lips parted. I'm sorry," he stammered. You look exactly like the daughter you left at a metro station." I finished for him, my voice calm, controlled, deadly. The color drained from his face. "I didn't know," he said quickly. "Your stepmother," she said. I raised my hand. "Sit," I said. He obeyed. Power isn't loud. It's unquestioned. You didn't come here to apologize, I continued. People who regret their choices don't wait 16 years. His shoulders slumped. I need help, he admitted. I lost everything. Of course you did, I thought. He talked and talked. How my stepmother drained his accounts, how she left without a goodbye, how illness took his strength, how loneliness ate him alive. He never once asked how I survived. That told me everything. You abandoned me, I said finally. Why? He stared at the floor. I was weak, he whispered. I chose peace over responsibility. I nodded. Then let me teach you something, I said. Peace always sends the bill later. I stood and walked to the window. Below us, the city pulsed with life I had built from nothing. When you left me, I said, I slept on benches. I learned which shelters were safe. I learned how hunger changes you. He flinched. I learned, I continued, that love without protection is useless. Silence swallowed the room. Then he asked the question I'd been waiting for. Will you help me? I turned slowly. Why should I asked. Tears filled his eyes. Because I'm your father, I laughed. Not cruel, honest. No, I said. You're just the man who taught me never to depend on anyone. I pressed a button on my desk. Security appeared instantly. Escort Mr. Hayes out, I said, and make sure he receives the check. My father looked up sharply. A check? Yes, I replied. Enough to survive, not enough to forget. He stood, shaking. At the door, he turned back. You became everything I couldn't protect, he said. I met his eyes. No, I corrected him. I became everything you tried to erase. The door closed behind him. I thought it was over. I was wrong. That night, rain returned. Harder, angrier. My phone rang at 2:03 a.m., unknown number. I answered. A woman spoke. Calm, cold, familiar in a way that made my stomach twist. You should have stayed dead, Angelina. My breath caught. I know what you did, the voice continued. I know where you slept. I know who helped you. I whispered. Who is this? She laughed softly. The woman who finished what your father started. My hands trembled. You're lying, I said. No, she replied. I'm coming back. The line went dead. I stood alone in my penthouse. Rain sliding down the glass like tears the city never sheds. That was the moment I understood something terrifying. My past wasn't done with me. It was angry, and it knew exactly how to reach me. If you're still listening, subscribe now, because in the next part, the woman who destroyed my childhood steps out of the shadows and forces me to choose between revenge and becoming the monster she always believed I was. And trust me, that choice changes everything. The knock came at 6:17 a.m., not loud, not rushed, precise, like the person on the other side knew exactly where I would be standing when I heard it. I didn't open the door. I checked the security feed, and my blood turned to ice. She was standing there in the rain, unchanged, same posture, same sharp eyes, same mouth that never smiled unless someone else was hurting. My stepmother, 16 years had passed, but time had only refined her cruelty. She wore a beige coat, hair perfectly tied, hands folded patiently like she was waiting to be invited back into a life she never deserved. I whispered her name without sound. She looked straight into the camera and smiled. If you're listening right now, subscribe, because the moment your past knocks on your door, you either hide or you take control. And I was done hiding. I didn't let her in. Instead, I spoke through the intercom. You have 5 seconds to explain why you're at my home. She tilted her head, amused. Still dramatic, she said calmly. You always were. My chest tightened. You abandoned me, I said. You destroyed my childhood. She laughed. A soft, familiar sound that used to make my stomach twist when I was 16. No, she corrected. I finished what your mother started. That sentence hit harder than any slap. You have no right, I began. Oh, I have every right, she interrupted. Because I made you. I ended the call. Security moved in instantly, but she raised her hand. Tell Angelina, she said loudly, knowing the microphones would catch it, that if she sends me away, I'll tell her where her father really was that night. I froze. The rain got louder. I opened the door. She stepped inside like she'd never left. Warmth, perfume, poison. We sat across from each other in my living room, glass table between us, reflecting 2 versions of the same life. You look expensive, she said, scanning the room. Trauma suits you. What do you want? I asked. She crossed her legs slowly. Truth, she said, and a little appreciation. For what? I snapped. For not killing you when you were weak, she replied without blinking. My nails dug into my palm. You left me at a metro station in the rain. Yes, she said, and look how beautifully you survived. I stood up. Get out, she didn't move. You think your father abandoned you because I asked him to, she said softly. Angelina, he begged me to take you. The room spun. You're lying. She leaned forward. He said you reminded him too much of your mother, her illness, her weakness, her need. My throat burned. He chose me, she continued. And I chose peace. I laughed. A sharp, broken sound. You ruined him, I said. No, she replied. I revealed him. She reached into her bag and placed a folder on the table. Photographs slid out. My father. Another woman. Another child. Dated before my mother died. He was never loyal, she said. I just made sure he paid. I stared at the images, rage and clarity mixing into something dangerous. You didn't come here to confess, I said. She smiled. I came to warn you. About what? About the people watching you now, she said. Success makes noise, and noise attracts predators. She stood. Your empire, she continued. It was built on silence, on people who never asked how you rose so fast. I stepped closer. I built it alone. She shook her head slowly. No one builds empires alone. Then she looked me dead in the eyes. You crossed someone bigger than your father. My phone buzzed on the table. A message. Unknown. check your east warehouse. Now, my heart slammed. What did you do? I demanded. She smiled wider. Nothing, she said. Yet, I grabbed my keys and left her standing there. The warehouse was surrounded by police when I arrived. Fire trucks, sirens, cameras. Smoke rose into the sky like a memory burning. Inside, my entire shipment, months of work, was destroyed. And spray-painted across the main wall were 3 words: "We remember you." My knees weakened. This wasn't business. This was personal. My phone rang. She was calling. "You see," she said calmly when I answered, "the world doesn't forget girls who survive too loudly." "You did this," I hissed. "No," she replied. "I just introduced you." "To who?" I asked. She paused, then said the words that rewrote everything. "The same people who paid for your silence, the night you were left in the rain." The line went dead. I stood there, surrounded by smoke and flashing lights, realizing something terrifying. My abandonment wasn't just cruelty. It was a transaction, and someone had paid to erase me. If you're still listening, subscribe, because in the next part, I uncover why a 16-year-old girl was worth money, and why my stepmother wasn't the villain. She was just the messenger, and the real enemy. He's about to make himself known. The smoke from my warehouse followed me home like a curse. Even after I showered, even after I changed clothes, I could still smell it in my hair: burnt cardboard, melted plastic, and something deeper. The scent of a warning. When I stepped into my penthouse, the lights were on. I knew I'd turned them off. My security team stood in the living room, stiff and silent, like men who'd just been told to forget what they saw. And sitting on my sofa, legs crossed as if she owned the air, was my stepmother. She held a wine glass I didn't offer her. "Busy morning?" she asked. I didn't answer. I walked straight to my security chief. "Everyone out," I said. He hesitated. My stepmother smiled. "Oh, let them stay. I'm not here to kill you." I stared at my chief until he nodded, motioned his men out, and closed the door behind him. Now it was just us. The city below looked calm, unaware that my life had started bleeding into public. I threw my keys onto the table so hard they bounced. "You knew," I said. "You knew this would happen." She sipped her wine. "I knew it could." "Who paid?" I demanded. "Who paid to erase me that night?" She set the glass down carefully, like she was placing a weapon. "You're asking the wrong question," she said. I leaned forward. "Then give me the right one." Her eyes locked onto mine with the same cold patience I remembered from my childhood. "Ask why you were worth paying for," she whispered. My throat tightened. "Why?" I repeated. She tilted her head slightly. "Because you saw something you weren't supposed to see." A memory trembled at the edge of my mind. Not a full picture, just flashes. A door, a man's voice, my mother coughing, a phone call, papers on a kitchen table. "I was 16, I said. "I didn't know anything." She laughed softly. "That's the problem. You didn't know you knew." My phone buzzed again. "Unknown. You have 24 hours. Come alone." Bridge Street Station, 11:47 p.m. My stomach turned. 11:47. The same time I'd been left at the metro station, drenched in rain, waiting for a father who never returned. My stepmother watched my face change. "They're inviting you back to your origin story," she said, almost amused. "What is Bridge Street Station?" I asked, though I already felt the answer in my bones. "The station you were left at," she said, "but not the one you remember." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" She stood, walked toward my window, and looked down at the city like it was a chessboard. "There are 2 stations," she said. "One public, one private, one for commuters, one for people who move things quietly." "Move what?" I asked, though my skin already knew. She didn't say the word. She didn't have to. My hands trembled. "You're telling me I was left there because I saw something illegal," I said. She turned around. "I'm telling you," she said slowly, "that your mother didn't just die. She was silenced." I lunged forward, fury exploding through me. "You don't say that," I hissed. "You don't get to rewrite her death." Her expression didn't change. "I'm not rewriting," she said. "I'm removing the pretty lie you've been using to survive." I stared at her, breath shaking. "Prove it." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn keychain. A cheap plastic tag, faded blue, with a number stamped into it. B-17. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I remembered that tag. It had been on my mother's keys. Until the day she died. "How do you have that?" I whispered. My stepmother's eyes held mine without mercy. "Because your father gave it to me," she said, as an apology. My vision blurred with rage. "My father wouldn't." "He would," she cut in. "He did, and he'll do worse if it keeps him breathing." Silence pressed in, thick as the rain outside. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "You think your empire is yours," she murmured, "but it's built on a foundation you never questioned. Start digging and you'll find bones." I swallowed. "Whose bones?" She walked closer, voice lowering. "Yours," she said, "the version of you that was supposed to disappear." I stared at the message on my phone again. Bridge Street Station, 11:47 p.m. Come alone. A trap, a summons, a test. And still, I knew I was going, because the mystery wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about the truth of my mother, the truth of my father, the truth of why a 16-year-old girl was valuable enough to erase. "If I go," I said slowly, "what happens?" My stepmother's mouth curved slightly, almost proud. "You stop being a survivor," she said, "and you become a threat." I grabbed my coat. She watched me with calm eyes. "You're going to get yourself killed." I paused at the door. "No," I said. "I already died at that station. Tonight I'm going to find out who buried me." If you're still listening, subscribe, because the next part is where the rain returns. The clock hits 11:47, and I walk back into the place that broke me, only to discover my father wasn't the one driving that night. He was in the back seat, and the man in the front was someone I've seen on TV my entire life. The rain started exactly at 11:46. Not earlier, not later. Like the city itself remembered the appointment. I parked 2 blocks away from Bridge Street Station and walked the rest. No security, no phone, no protection, except the truth I was hunting. The station looked abandoned now, boarded shops, broken lights, graffiti layered over graffiti. But beneath the decay, I could feel it. This place was alive. Waiting. At 11:47 p.m., the old clock above the entrance flickered once and stopped. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, measured, confident. "You came alone," a man said. I didn't turn around. "I always do," I replied. He laughed quietly. "That's what made you valuable." I closed my eyes. That voice. I'd heard it before. On television, in interviews, at award ceremonies. I turned, and there he was. Senator Michael Crow, the man who talked about family values. The man who cried on camera about protecting children. The man whose face was printed on banners across the city. He stood under the broken station light, rain soaking into his expensive coat, looking at me like I was a problem that refused to stay buried. "You've grown," he said. "Your mother would be surprised." My blood went cold. "You don't get to say her name," I said. He smiled faintly. "I paid a lot of money, so no one ever would." If you're listening right now, subscribe, because this is the moment when the truth stops being abstract and starts naming names. I stepped closer, heart hammering. "You were there," I said, "that night." "Yes," he replied calmly. "In the front seat." Memories exploded. The car interior, leather seats, rain streaking the windshield, my father's hands shaking, my stepmother silent, and a man in the front seat, talking softly on the phone. I staggered. "You killed my mother," I whispered. He sighed, like a man tired of being misunderstood. "No," he said. "I silenced a liability." I lunged at him. Guards emerged from the shadows instantly, guns raised. "Careful," Crow said. "You're not 16 anymore, but you're still alone." "You paid them," I said through clenched teeth. "You paid to abandon me." "Yes," he said, "because you saw the files your mother hid. You didn't understand them. But children remember details adults miss." The rain poured harder. "She refused to hand them over," he continued. "She thought truth mattered more than survival." My voice broke. "So you killed her?" "She died from stress-related complications," he corrected smoothly. "The law is very flexible when you own it." I laughed bitterly. "And me?" I asked. "Why not kill me too?" He studied me carefully. "Because a dead child creates noise," he said. "An abandoned one disappears." My nails dug into my palms. "You made me homeless," I said. "Hungry, invisible." "And look what it produced," he replied. "An empire." He stepped closer. "Your success," he said. "It was permitted. Every loan, every approval, every door that opened just enough." My stomach dropped. "You watched me," I whispered. "Yes," he said. "We wanted to see what trauma could build." Rage flooded me. "I'll destroy you," I said. Crow smiled sadly. "You can't," he said, "because your empire touches mine. Cut me out, and it collapses." The station lights suddenly flickered on. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Crow's expression didn't change. "You're going to walk away," he said. "You'll keep your wealth, your name, your power. And if I don't," he leaned in, voice low, "then I release the truth," he said, "that your success was engineered, that you're not self-made." Silence roared in my ears. He stepped back. "Think carefully, Angelina," he said. "Revenge costs more than money." He turned to leave, but then I said the words that stopped him. "My mother copied the files." He froze. "She hid them," I continued. "And I know where." Slowly, he turned back. For the first time, fear cracked his face. "You're bluffing," I smiled. "I learned from the best." Rain soaked us both as the truth hung between us like a loaded weapon. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "You have no idea what you're starting." I stepped back into the shadows. "No," I replied, "but I know how it ends." I walked away from Bridge Street Station, heart pounding, knowing the final move was mine, because the last part of this story isn't about survival. It's about exposure. And in the final part, I decide whether to burn my empire to the ground, just to watch a powerful man finally fall. If you're still here, subscribe, because the ending, it rains harder. The rain followed me home. Not loudly, not violently. It followed like a witness. I didn't sleep. I didn't drink. I didn't call anyone. I sat on the floor of my penthouse as the city lights blinked outside the windows, holding a small metal box in my hands, the box my mother hid, the box no one knew I remembered. I found it years ago, buried behind a loose panel in an old storage unit we used to share. I didn't open it then. I was still surviving, still afraid that truth might cost me the only thing I had left: distance. Inside the box now were flash drives, paper copies, handwritten notes in my mother's careful script, names, dates, transfers, and at the center of it all Senator Michael Crow. Not just him, judges, bank executives, charity foundations, media donors, an entire ecosystem built on silence. I understood then why he didn't kill me. I was more useful alive. That's when my phone rang. "Unknown number," I answered. "You have 12 hours, Crow said calmly. "Give me the drives." I smiled. "You taught me something," I replied. "Dead girls make noise. Abandoned ones grow teeth." Silence. Then he said quietly, "You think you're ready for what happens next?" "I was ready at 16, I said. "You just didn't know it." I hung up. If you're still listening, subscribe, because this is the moment every revenge story lies to you about. This isn't where anger screams. This is where it thinks. I didn't go to the police. Not yet. I went somewhere more dangerous. The media. By sunrise, encrypted copies were in the hands of 3 investigative journalists who hated each other but loved truth more. I staggered the releases. Partial leaks. Enough to raise questions. Not enough to reveal the source. By noon, Crow's office denied everything. By evening, one of his donors resigned. By night, the first arrest happened. Not Crow, someone smaller. That's how systems collapse, not from the top, but from the fear rising underneath. My phone rang again. This time it was my father. I almost didn't answer. Almost. "Angelina," he whispered. "Please, they're asking questions. They know my name." I closed my eyes. "Where were you that night?" I asked softly. He cried. "I was in the back seat," he said. "I didn't drive. I didn't choose." "You did," I replied. "You just chose not to fight." "I was scared," he said. "So was I answered. "And I was 16. I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to him. The next morning, Crow held a press conference. He spoke about lies, about ambition, about enemies trying to rewrite history. Halfway through, a reporter asked about a private train station under Bridge Street. His face changed. Just for a second. Enough. That night, warrants were issued. Crow didn't run. He never thought he'd need to. When they arrested him, he asked for one call. He called me. "You burned everything," he said quietly. "No," I replied. I turned on the lights. "You think this ends me?" he asked. I looked out at the rain one last time. "No," I said. "It ends me." I transferred my companies into blind trusts. I stepped down publicly. I disappeared from headlines. Power is loud. Freedom is silent. Years passed. Crow died in prison waiting for trial. My stepmother vanished the moment her name surfaced. My father faded into irrelevance. And me, I live somewhere it rains gently. Sometimes I pass a metro station. Sometimes I sit on a bench. Not because I miss the girl I was, but because I remember her. She didn't survive so I could be rich. She survived so the truth could grow teeth. And if you stayed until the end, subscribe. Because not all success stories are about winning. Some are about refusing to disappear. And that's the most dangerous thing you can do.